Bernard Lawrence Madoff was born April 29, 1938, in Queens, New York City, to Sylvia Muntner and Ralph Madoff, who was a plumber and stockbroker. His family was Jewish. Madoff's grandparents were immigrants from Poland, Romania, and Austria. He was the second of 3 children. His siblings are Sandra Wiener and Peter Madoff. Madoff graduated from Far Rockaway High School in 1956, was an American financial criminal and financier who was the admitted mastermind of the largest known Ponzi scheme in history, worth an estimated $65 billion. He was at one time chairman of the Nasdaq Stock Exchange. Madoff attended the University of Alabama for 1 year, where he became a brother of the Tau chapter of the Sigma Alpha Mu fraternity, then transferred to and graduated from Hofstra University in 1960 with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. Madoff briefly attended Brooklyn Law School, but left after his first year to found Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities LLC and work for himself. In 1960, Madoff founded Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities LLC as a broker-dealer for penny stock with $5,000, equivalent to $52,000 in 2024, that he earned from working as a lifeguard and irrigation sprinkler installer, and a loan of $50,000 from his father-in-law, accountant Saul Alperin, who referred a circle of friends and their families. Carl J. E. Shapiro was one such early customer, investing $100,000. Initially, the firm made markets, quoted bid and ask prices via the National Quotation Bureau's pink sheets. In order to compete with firms that were members of the New York Stock Exchange trading on the stock exchange's floor, his firm began using innovative computer information technology to disseminate its quotes. After a trial run, the technology that the firm helped to develop became the National Association of Securities Dealers Automated Quotation Stock Market, NASDAQ. After 41 years as a sole proprietorship, the Madoff firm incorporated in 2001 as a limited liability company with Madoff as the sole shareholder. Madoff was the first prominent practitioner of payment for order flow, in which a dealer pays a broker for the right to execute a customer's order. This has been called a legal kickback. Some academics have questioned the ethics of these payments. Madoff argued that these payments did not alter the price that the customer received. He viewed the payments as a normal business practice. If your girlfriend goes to buy stockings at a supermarket, the racks that display those stockings are usually paid for by the company that manufactured the stockings. Order flow was an issue that attracted a lot of attention but was grossly overrated. Madoff was active with the National Association of Securities Dealers, NASD, a self-regulatory securities industry organization. He served as chairman of its board of directors and was a member of its board of governors. Mr. Madoff's enormous fraud began with friends, relatives, and country club acquaintances in Manhattan and on Long Island, a population that shared his professed interest in Jewish philanthropy, but it ultimately grew to encompass major charities like Hadassah, universities like Tufts and Yeshiva, institutional investors, and wealthy families in Europe, Latin America and Asia. Buttressed by elaborate account statements and a deep reservoir of trust from his investors and regulators, Mr. Madoff steered his fraud scheme safely through a severe recession in the early 1990s, a global financial crisis in 1998 and the anxious aftermath of the terrorist attacks in September 2001. But the financial meltdown that began in the mortgage market in mid-2007 and reached a climax with the failure of Lehman Brothers in September 2008 was his undoing. Hedge funds and other institutional investors, pressured by demands from their own clients, began to take hundreds of millions of dollars from their Madoff accounts. By December 2008, more than $12 billion had been withdrawn, and little fresh cash was coming in to cover redemptions. Faced with ruin, Mr. Madoff confessed to his 2 sons that his supposedly profitable money management operation was actually a one big lie. They reported his confession to law enforcement, and the next day, December 11, 2008, he was arrested at his Manhattan penthouse. The victims of his fraud, some of whom went overnight from comfortable wealth to frantic desperation, numbered in the thousands and were scattered from Palm Beach, Florida, to the Persian Gulf. The paper losses totaled $64.8 billion, including the fictional profits he had credited to customer accounts over at least 2 decades. At the firm, he employed his brother Peter Madoff as senior managing director and chief compliance officer, Peter's daughter Shana Madoff as the firm's rules and compliance officer and attorney, and his now-deceased sons Mark Madoff and Andrew Madoff. Peter was sentenced to 10 years in prison in 2012, and Mark hanged himself in 2010, exactly 2 years after his father's arrest. Andrew died of lymphoma on September 3, 2014. On December 10, 2008, Madoff's sons Mark and Andrew told authorities that their father had confessed to them that the asset management unit of his firm was a massive Ponzi scheme, and quoted him as saying that it was one big lie. The following day, agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation arrested Madoff and charged him with 1 count of securities fraud. On March 12, 2009, Madoff pleaded guilty to 11 federal felonies and admitted to turning his wealth management business into a massive Ponzi scheme. The Madoff investment scandal defrauded thousands of investors of billions of dollars. Madoff said that he began the Ponzi scheme in the early 1990s, but an ex-trader admitted in court to faking records for Madoff since the early 1970s. Those charged with recovering the missing money believe that the investment operation may never have been legitimate. The amount missing from client accounts was almost $65 billion, including fabricated gains. The Securities Investor Protection Corporation, SIPC, trustee estimated actual direct losses to investors of $18 billion, of which $14.418 billion has been recovered and returned, while the search for additional funds continues. On June 29, 2009, Madoff was sentenced to 150 years in prison, the maximum sentence allowed. On April 14, 2021, he died at the Federal Medical Center, Butner, in North Carolina, from chronic kidney disease. Mr. Madoff, who was serving a 150-year prison sentence, had asked for early release in February 2020, saying in a court filing that he had less than 18 months to live after entering the final stages of kidney disease, and that he had been admitted to palliative care. In phone interviews with the Washington Post at the time, Mr. Madoff expressed remorse for his misdeeds, saying he had made a terrible mistake. "I'm terminally ill," he said. "There's no cure for my type of disease. So, I've served. I've served 11 years already, and, quite frankly, I've suffered through it. More than money was lost. At least 2 people, in despair over their losses, died by suicide. A major Madoff investor suffered a fatal heart attack after months of contentious litigation over his role in the scheme. Some investors lost their homes. Others lost the trust and friendship of relatives and friends they had inadvertently steered into harm's way. Mr. Madoff was not spared in these tragic aftershocks. His older son, Mark, died by suicide in his Manhattan apartment early on the morning of December 11, 2010, the second anniversary of his father's arrest. He was characterized by his lawyer, Martin Flumenbaum, as an innocent victim of his father's monstrous crime who succumbed to 2 years of unrelenting pressure from false accusations and innuendo. One of Mark Madoff's last messages before his death was to Mr. Flumenbaum. "Nobody wants to believe the truth. Please take care of my family." If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel.